She blamed me for her cheating. So I let her explain it. To her mom, her boss, and our family WhatsApp group. My wife claims she strayed because she was feeling a bit too much like a couch potato, so I thought I'd add some flavor to our lives by introducing her to her family and friends. Nothing like a little social seasoning, right? My wife, Amber, 28, and I, 29, have been hitched for a mere 2 years now. It's wild to think that just a few days ago, I was convinced everything was just right and that we were on the path to success. You often hear folks grumbling about marriage being a scam, and I used to think that was just a bunch of nonsense because, in my experience, I hit the jackpot. I had this married buddy who constantly reminded me to just hang tight until the honeymoon phase wore off. Yet here I am, 2 years in, still grinning like a fool just like I did on our wedding day. Okay, maybe I'm stretching the truth a bit, but I was genuinely thrilled. I used to think my marriage was pure gold, but it turns out it was just a shiny illusion, polished to perfection. When Amber and I crossed paths 6 years back, we were bursting with energy and had all the time in the world, like two kids in a candy store, minus the sugar rush, of course. As time has rolled on, a few things have shifted around here. We might still be in the spring of our youth, but it seems like adulthood has thrown a whole bunch of responsibilities our way, doesn't it? We've both scaled the heights of our careers, so let's just say our free time has become as rare as a unicorn sighting. Even though our wallets are a bit happier these days, finding the time to escape for some fun can feel like trying to catch a greased pig. And let me tell you, Amber is all about that fun life. Well, I wouldn't exactly label her a party girl, but Amber definitely had her fair share of nights out on the town. She thrived on it, while I was more of a cozy couch potato. She always joked that I was more of a houseplant than a person, but I guess we both picked up a few traits from each other along the way. I've settled into the rhythm of hitting the town for some fun every now and then, while she's found her groove cozying up at home with a good book or a movie on the weekends. Finding common ground is like a potluck dinner, everyone brings something to the table, and hopefully, no one shows up with fruitcake. Oh, not quite, my friend. Well, it seems things didn't quite go her way, and she kept that little nugget to herself. As far as I could tell, we were both riding the happiness train without a care in the world. Whether we were out on the town or cozied up on the couch with Netflix, I was all in for the adventure. Each moment was a delightful chapter in our story. I had the same vibe from her, too. She never really dropped any hints that she was unhappy with her life and the same old daily grind. That bit really gets under my skin. Seriously, is communication really that tricky? As I glanced back, I spotted a few changes here and there, but they were so slight that I didn't think to raise an eyebrow or even jot them down in my mental notebook. Every now and then, she'd trade our cozy nights in for a night out with her friends, as if the allure of socializing was a siren call she just couldn't resist. It felt pretty normal to me, like a Tuesday that forgot it was supposed to be exciting. I figured she still had that extroverted spark inside her, so I was totally cool with it. Yet, there were moments when she appeared to be off in her own little world. I'd give it my best shot to chat with her, but it was like her brain had packed its bags and taken a vacation somewhere far away. I didn't give that much thought either. We all have our moments of stress, so I thought she was just juggling too many balls in the air. I even thought I could win her back by whisking her away for some relaxing massages. It was one of those ordinary days when I decided to come home a bit earlier than usual, only to stumble upon a revelation that turned my world upside down. I clocked out a bit early, all set to whisk her away for a delightful dinner date that would knock her socks off. Instead, I stumbled upon her in quite the compromising position in the living room, bent over the sofa with another fellow playing the role of the unexpected guest. She let out a scream that could wake the neighbors, and there I was, frozen like a deer in headlights, just gaping at her. It was like stepping into a dream where the coffee was always hot and the plot twists never stopped coming. I was certain of what I was witnessing, yet it seemed like my eyes had decided to play a little trick on me. Up until that moment, I was convinced my marriage was a picture-perfect romance, blissfully unaware that there might be a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. As I stood there, my brain doing somersaults trying to make sense of the chaos, Amber and the guy were in a frantic race to put their clothes back on, like two squirrels caught in a sudden rainstorm. Amber was going on and on about how sorry she was and that she had an explanation, but honestly, I was tuning her out like a radio stuck on a static-filled channel. I went from feeling like a statue to being angrier than a cat in a bathtub. I was so mad that I could have powered a small earthquake with my shaking. In a fit of frustration that could only be described as borderline comical, I found myself eyeing the nearest target, who, let's be honest, was just asking for it. So, I did what any rational person would do, I tackled him. Well, I can't say I'm exactly beaming with pride over it, but hey, that's the way the cookie crumbled. I caught him in the act of wrestling with his pants, and let me tell you, it was a sight to behold as I sent him tumbling right down. We both went down like a couple of clumsy acrobats, and I had already landed a couple of punches when he started wailing. I didn't know, man, I didn't know. Well, that certainly gave me pause for thought. One part of me was itching to give him a good smack, while the other part was nodding knowingly, realizing she'd likely spun him a yarn about being single. Despite my simmering frustration, I hopped off him, and he scrambled to throw on the rest of his clothes like he was late for a very important meeting. He burst out the door, wrestling with his clothes like a contestant in a very unglamorous fashion show. She just stood there staring at me as if I was about to launch into a wrestling match right then and there. I went ahead and asked for an explanation, because why not? It took her a bit to pull herself together, like trying to untangle a pair of headphones after they've been in your pocket for too long. So, she casually dropped the bomb that boredom had been her constant companion for ages, and this was her idea of spicing things up a bit. She claimed she was sorry, but honestly, it sounded more like a cat trying to meow in a dog park, just didn't quite hit the mark. She was scared, but it wasn't like she was genuinely feeling sorry for herself. She was completely unfazed. Perhaps she was completely indifferent to my opinion, or maybe she genuinely believed she had a solid reason for straying from our relationship. Whichever way you slice it, it really got under my skin even more. After that, I launched into a lengthy tirade that could have rivaled a novel's worth of drama. I paced around the room like a caged animal, trying to avoid making a decision that would surely land me in the "what was I thinking?" Hall of Fame. I let out a string of colorful words directed her way. I let her have it, words flying like confetti at a parade. I raised my voice at her, like a character in a dramatic novel, but let's be honest, it was more of a comedic misunderstanding than a Shakespearean tragedy. Initially, she was as silent as a library on a Tuesday, but before long, the floodgates opened, and she was both crying and shouting like a contestant on a reality show finale. She claimed I was the reason she ended up here. She claimed I transformed her into a version of myself, dull and predictable, just like me. She claimed she was merely on a quest to rediscover that spark of life. I was absolutely flabbergasted by that one. Looking to spark that zest for life once more? Did having a devoted husband and a steady relationship somehow drain the spark from her life? She didn't even bat an eye at what she'd done. It was as if she was simply sharing her thoughts, not trying to dodge any responsibility. She genuinely believed her actions were totally on point. She mentioned how she missed those spontaneous trips and the little gifts I used to surprise her with. But, you know, life happened, busy jobs and all those lofty goals we're trying to save up for now. Was she genuinely attempting to pin the blame on me for actually acting like a responsible adult? At this point, she was all buttoned up, while I was practically a whirlwind heading out the door. She trailed behind me, pleading for me to stick around and have a little chat. I spun around to meet her gaze and inquired what was on her mind. The fella she was just getting cozy with in our living room, or her not-so-great reason for the whole escapade? She mentioned that we should sit down and hash things out together, like two seasoned detectives on the case of the missing socks. She insisted that our marriage didn't have to end just yet and that we could tackle the root of the issue together. I just strolled back to my trusty steed, aka my car. What's the real issue here? She was still adamant about placing the entire blame squarely on my shoulder. It seems I managed to bore her to the point where her only escape plan involved a rendezvous with another guy. Who knew I had that kind of talent? I had graduated from mad to a whole new level of exasperation. Well, there it was, an insult, served up on a silver platter. How delightful. She was really pulling a fast one on me with that work excuse. Did she really think I was that clueless? I hopped into my car and gave the door a good thud right in front of her. She rapped on the window like a determined detective, but I just shifted the car into gear and zoomed away, leaving her in my rearview mirror, probably plotting her next move. I took a drive with no destination in mind, just hoping to shake off the cobwebs in my brain. Well, I had that sinking feeling that the party was officially over. She could ramble on about how we needed to sort things out, but let's be real, this was one pickle that just couldn't be unpicked. She completely wrecked our marriage and somehow thought it was all on me. Classic, right? That's the thing that really stuck with me. What really got under my skin was how completely unfazed she appeared by it all. I found myself hanging out in a parking lot, a solid 30 minutes away from home, just twiddling my thumbs and wondering how I got there. I plopped myself in the car and let my thoughts wander for a bit. I realized that divorce was the only play in my hand, but somehow, it just didn't feel like the final act I was hoping for. I walked in on my wife having a little too much fun in our living room, making it feel like a scene straight out of a budget motel. And wouldn't you know it, she had the nerve to turn the tables on me. I had every intention of making her foot the bill, one way or another. Once I managed to cool my jets, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I had to gather some evidence, pronto. Well, wouldn't you know it? I strolled in on my wife's little performance, and guess what? I completely blanked on grabbing a camera. So there I was, empty-handed and missing out on a golden opportunity for some unforgettable snapshots. Then it hit me, why not coax her into confessing it on paper? I shot her a quick text, letting her know I'd be crashing at my brother's place for a bit and could use some breathing room. She nodded like she was the queen of understanding and promised we could hash it out the next day. So, I turned to her and said, "Look, I just need to wrap my head around why you decided to go off the rails and cheat on me." She took her sweet time responding, and I couldn't help but worry that she had cracked the code on my little scheme. But after a while, she finally hit me with a lengthy paragraph that could rival a novel. I won't put you to sleep with the details, especially since I could hardly muster the enthusiasm to read it myself. But there I was, on a quest for that one elusive line that would confirm she actually did. And I hit the jackpot because she admitted it a few times in her epic wall of text. She claimed I pushed her right into the embrace of another guy, and apparently, he was the one who brought her back to life. She even mentioned that they typically hung out at his place, and this was the first time they decided to shake things up and do it at ours. I passed on that one, but hey, no biggie. I managed to coax her into confessing her little escapade. However, she had a little extra to add. She filled me in on the fellow. He was a grad student at a college just around the corner. He would waltz into the same cafe she frequented during her lunch breaks, as if it were a scene straight out of a quirky novel. They bumped into each other a few times, exchanged some light banter, and before they knew it, things really started to heat up. She was adamant that she never mentioned her marital status to him. I was absolutely floored that she was just spilling all this information like it was the latest gossip at a coffee shop. It was nice to have, like a cozy blanket on a chilly day, but honestly, it didn't do much to warm me up when I heard it. I'm not sure if she thought I was going to catch her drift or something like that. Finding out you were cheated on is like stepping on a Lego in the dark, painful enough, but then having to witness it? That's like watching a bad reality show unfold right before your eyes, and you didn't even sign up for the season. Particularly when she rambled on about how he was still full of beans and as youthful as a spring chicken. So, it turns out he was into mountain biking as a hobby. Who knew? I couldn't have cared less. I hit the pause button on reading right then and there, and as for her messages? Well, they went unanswered, like a cat ignoring its owner's call. When she called an hour later, I simply let the phone ring, as if it were a doorbell I had no intention of answering. I returned home the following day, but let's just say chatting with her wasn't on my to-do list. I just swung by to grab my things. I decided to play hooky from work and swung by at noon, fully convinced she'd be clocked in at her desk, probably buried under a mountain of paperwork. When she finally returned home that day, it was as if she had a sixth sense about my arrival, because she picked up the phone and called me. She wanted to know why I showed up when she was out, claiming we were supposed to have a little chat before I made my grand entrance. That was the moment I finally spilled my guts to her. I had reached my limit with her constantly pointing fingers at me for this mess. She found our marriage about as exciting as watching paint dry, and rather than rolling up her sleeves to make things better, she decided to spice up her life with a little extracurricular activity involving another man. But somehow, she fancied she could play the victim card. So, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "That's it, I'm outta here." I had everything I needed packed up tight, and let me tell you, I wasn't planning on coming back. Staying with my brother? Not a chance. So, she might as well save her breath and not bother looking for me there. It was the first time since I caught her red-handed that she actually sounded like a deer in headlights. It felt like the universe was finally sending her a memo. Her marriage was on the brink of a spectacular nosedive. She begged me to swing by just once for a chat, but I politely declined, as if I were dodging a particularly enthusiastic door-to-door salesman. So, I casually mentioned that the next time she'd hear from me would be when I waltzed in with the papers for her to sign. As I hung up the phone, I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. I decided it was best to make a swift exit rather than hang around for the melodrama of tears and tissues. I dove headfirst into the delightful world of divorce planning. I've got myself a lawyer, and we've had a good chat about the options on the table. You know, the possibilities and all that jazz. Sure, the divorce might feel like a bumpy ride, but honestly, anything beats sharing a roof with her. I really just want this to wrap up so I can get on with my life, You know? It's like waiting for a bus that never shows up. Let's just get to the next stop already. Stumbling upon a loved one in a moment of surprise? Pulling that off in your own abode, huh? Now that's a recipe for a sleepless night. And then she had the audacity to turn the tables on you? So, did you accidentally nudge her into the arms of someone else? Oh, give me a break. It seems you really believed everything was hunky-dory, and hey, that's not your fault at all. Well, that's her own doing for tiptoeing around instead of just coming clean. Sneaky moves rarely end well, do they? Oh sure, because nothing says let's talk about our feelings quite like a good old-fashioned explosion, right? Well, that's a whole new level of wildness, isn't it? Oh, come on. You can't just pull a fast one and then turn around to give a TED Talk on relationships 5 minutes later. Here's the latest scoop. Initially, I had no intention of spilling the beans about what went down. So, aside from my first post lurking in the shadows, that's a secret for now. Getting cheated on stings like stepping on a Lego in the dark. It's a pain that's hard to put into words, and your pride takes a hit that feels like a punchline gone wrong. You're worried that everyone sees you as the guy who couldn't keep his wife happy, even though the truth runs a lot deeper than that. But Amber's reaction to the whole situation really sent me spiraling, and I ended up doing something I never imagined I would actually do. At first, she just wouldn't stop texting me. She had a knack for asking for forgiveness, but it always felt a bit like she was reading from a script, you know? Detached. Like she was apologizing to a lamp instead of a person. It was as if she thought it was just another item on her to-do list, yet somehow managed to dodge any responsibility like a pro at a game of dodgeball. She kept insisting that we had to team up to tackle this whole situation together. She really had the audacity to suggest that tackling the issues behind this would somehow turn us into better versions of ourselves. I couldn't help but notice she was starting to shoulder a bit of the blame, like a kid trying to carry a backpack that's way too big for them. Well, that was a step up, wasn't it? It's a shame it didn't strike a chord with me, but hey, it did get the old gears turning. If she could pull off gaslighting me without breaking a sweat, then spinning tall tales to her friends and family would be a walk in the park for her. I had to take the reins of the story. Revenge? Nah, that wasn't the name of the game. Well, you see, it was merely a little something I whipped up for my own safety, nothing too dramatic. I had to confess, there was a sprinkle of revenge in the mix too. She had managed to convince herself that she was as innocent as a kitten, but now it was time to face the music and see how her heart would react when the entire neighborhood got wind of her little escapade. I almost went for something over the top, but then I had a little chat with my better judgment and decided against it. I figured it'd be better to let her actions do the talking, so I shot off a quick text to her friends and family. It presented all the facts straight up, no frills attached. I broke the news that Amber and I were calling it quits, and then I laid out the reasons behind it. After that, I went ahead and attached the images of her confessing to her little escapade. I made it a point to keep all the good stuff front and center in the attachments. No words were necessary on my part. There it was, her own voice echoing back at me, claiming I had somehow nudged her into the embrace of another guy, who apparently made her feel like she was starring in her own romantic comedy. I even tossed in the part where she mentioned it was the first time they got busy at our place. The consequences hit like a slap in the face, and boy, did they come fast. My phone erupted like a popcorn machine, which I saw coming from a mile away, but what really caught me off guard was that half the calls were from Amber. Amber took her sweet time figuring it out, mostly because I forgot to send her a copy. She was well aware of her actions, after all. The initial calls were from our nearest and dearest, both mine and hers, like a cozy family reunion on the phone. People were buzzing with concern, wondering if the rumors were actually true. Once I managed to assure them that this wasn't just an elaborate setup for a hidden camera show, their responses were quite the mixed bag. While many folks felt for me, a few were just ready to throw a virtual tomato at Amber. Well, it seemed like everyone had a bone to pick with her. Her parents were almost beside themselves over it. Her mom even pulled out all the stops, trying to persuade me to take her back, and swore she'd have a heart-to-heart with her. She volunteered to have a little heart-to-heart with Amber, assuring everyone that this little hiccup was a one-time deal. She's a lovely lady with the best of intentions, bless her heart. I figured she was just doing her best to keep her daughter's marriage afloat, so I couldn't really blame her for that. I just told her straight up that trusting her not to pull the same stunt again was like trusting a cat not to knock over a glass of water. Not happening. It wasn't exactly a walk in the park the first time around, and chances are, it wouldn't be a cakewalk the second time either. Well, I received a couple of calls from some pals as well. Well, it seems my instincts were spot on after all. She attempted to steer the story, telling her friends that we had personality quirks that just couldn't mesh, like oil and water at a salad bar. Well, they couldn't really dispute the facts, could they? Everyone was on the same page when it came to Amber's rather revolting antics. It was a real treat to spot folks cheering for me from the sidelines. I had no idea how much I craved someone to just admit that she was the one who goofed up, not me. About an hour after I had my little chat with her parents, Amber decided to ring me up for the first time. She was in tears, and her first instinct was to yell, "How could you do this?" She claimed I was humiliating her for making a mistake, but I couldn't help but recall that smug little grin she wore when she tried to shift all the blame onto me. If I hadn't happened to stroll in at just the right moment, she'd probably still be spinning her web of lies today. I couldn't muster an ounce of sympathy for her, not even if she were handing out free puppies. Honestly, seeing her tears felt like a little victory for me. She mentioned that her mom rang her up and gave her a good talking to about her little escapade. It seemed like our mutual friends had suddenly decided to play a game of musical chairs, and she was left standing alone, wondering what had just happened. Even a few of her pals were giving her a good-natured ribbing. She claimed I was wrecking her life, and it seemed like she was down to her last few allies. I informed her that the time had come for her to finally deal with the repercussions of her actions. If she fancied herself the victim, that was her prerogative, but it appeared the rest of the world had a rather different perspective on the matter. Yet, she wouldn't let up, claiming I was the villain for airing our dirty laundry. She mentioned it was one of those things we were meant to hash out behind closed doors, just the two of us. That really tickled my funny bone. So she could keep weaving her little tales while I was none the wiser? I'll pass, but I appreciate the offer. And with that, I wrapped up the call like a pro. If she felt like having another chat, we could always arrange that in front of a judge. But that didn't stop her from giving me a ring anyway. After an hour of her relentless calling, I decided it was time to hit the block button. Sometimes, silence really is golden. I had my lawyer pass along the message that if she wanted to chat with me, she could always reach out to him. You know, just keeping the lines of communication open, like a friendly game of telephone, but with fewer misunderstandings and more legal jargon. The divorce is still in progress, and honestly, it's shaping up quite nicely. My lawyer assured me it should be a walk in the park, considering we don't have any little ones or big-ticket items to squabble over. Amber's in a tug-of-war with the universe over that apartment, and you know what? She can have it. All hers. Every room in that joint has seen better days. If I were stuck with that place, I'd set the couch ablaze and give the living room a fiery farewell party. Alimony? Now that's a plot twist I didn't see coming. She's on a mission for spousal support, and here I am, digging my heels in like a stubborn mule, determined not to part with a single penny. She's got a decent gig, but I can't help but wonder how long she'll keep it, especially now that all her colleagues are in on her little secret of being a cheater. But let's be real, I'm not about to hand over a single penny to someone who pulled a fast one on me. The most hilarious part? Mr. Exciting, her affair partner, decided to drop me a line. Well, I have no clue how he stumbled upon the whole situation. Perhaps it was from a friend they both knew but had yet to bump into at the cafe. So, he found out about the divorce and shot me a text to say he was sorry. Classic move, right? He claimed, with all the sincerity of a soap opera character, that he had no clue she was hitched and promptly ghosted her like a bad date after that revelation. The fella didn't even seem upset that I'd bumped into him. He comes across as a pretty solid dude, all things considered. Well, let's just say the odds of us becoming best buddies are about as good as a snowball's chance in a sauna. I simply told him it was all good, and we decided to let it go at that. I'm feeling much better these days. I've snagged myself an apartment that's just a hop, skip, and a jump from the office. Who knew adulting could be this convenient? It's nothing to write home about, but hey, it gets the job done. Perfectly cozy for one, and you can rest easy knowing you won't accidentally stumble upon an unexpected living room performance. Isn't it funny how life throws us those little curveballs? Amber confessed she strayed because, well, she was just plain bored. Can you believe that? Now her life is packed with all the drama and excitement she could ever dream of, and let me tell you, it's a bit more than she signed up for. In the meantime, I'm just soaking up my little slice of calm and order. I totally understand why it seemed a bit like walking a tightrope to share that with everyone, but hey, I'm really glad you went for it. You took the necessary steps to guard your narrative, so now you can kick back and relax instead of letting her spin a tale that paints her in a more flattering light. Hey, I totally get it. Who could blame you for giving that apartment the old heave-ho? That place would definitely have a vibe like it was haunted by a particularly grumpy ghost after all that. What about the alimony, you ask? Absolutely, couldn't agree more. So, the thought of shelling out cash to someone who pulled a fast one on you? Now that's a plot twist worthy of a novel. Who knew betrayal came with a price tag? Oh, not a chance. So, what's your take on all this? We'd love to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. We appreciate you stopping by our little corner of the universe today. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, because you definitely don't want to miss our next adventure. Catch you later.